Thank you for welcoming us into your headphones. I'm Chema, reviewing Looking for Alaska. This is the Rollback. What's up, everyone? This is Chema from the Rollback. We're taking a little bit of a different spin today. For once, I am by myself. I am not with Eddie, Alex, or Fernie, or any of our usual guests. And instead of talking about a movie, I wanted to talk about a show. This 8-episode adaptation of the book Looking for Alaska by John Green that was done by Hulu in 2019. Now, I have a personal history with this book because it's one of my favorite books that I read as a teenager, and the Hulu adaptation came out almost like a year and some months ago. And I really enjoyed it, but I saw very little conversation on it. So I thought, let me take a moment to kind of talk about it, kind of talk the things that I like, things I didn't like, and we can have some discussion on it, because I think it's an adaptation that is very much worth visiting and revisiting if you did enjoy it. Let me just get you a little bit of the plot. Looking for Alaska, find your people, find yourself. Teenager Miles enrolls in a boarding school to try to gain a deeper perspective on life. After an unexpected tragedy, Miles and his friends try to make a sense of what they have been through. So Looking for Alaska, there's book written by John Green, the show created by Josh Schwartz, who was the creator of The OC back in the day. He also developed Gossip Girl and co-created Chuck. So this guy has a history of creating very interesting shows based on younger people with very specific issues and drama. And I think he is pretty much like the perfect person to adapt this. In fact, the story of the adaptation goes way beyond when the book first came out in 2005. He wrote a screenplay for a movie adaptation that ended up never being made. And eventually, years and years later, after his relationship with Hulu, he did the show The Runaways for Marvel, and now he finally got a chance to do the Looking for Alaska adaptation instead of a movie. It was turned into an 8-episode adaptation, which is perfect. That is, I think, the best way that an adaptation like this would work. The episodes are about an hour long, like 50 minutes to an hour long, and we got a really nice miniseries based on this book that I have a deep affection to, because I read it a lot when I was a high schooler, when I was a young teenager. And it really affected me, and it really opened a bigger scope. This is pretty much like the first book that I read, like a big, complex novel that eventually opened the path for me to becoming a bigger reader. So if you want to blame something on me being a big reader, this might be the one, Chief. This might be the one. So we have this Looking for Alaska adaptation. Of course, pretty famous novel. John, of course, became a super famous writer with this and with his other books, but especially when he did The Fault in Our Stars, which eventually also became a movie, which became a huge hit. I mean, if you were alive in 2014, you knew who John Green was. Like, he was unescapable. But I've been a fan of him since like 2009 or something, and Looking for Alaska was my introduction to him. And of course, Block Brothers, Nerdfighteria, his whole Crash Course, his whole projects have always been around me, ever present. But this one to me was special. I mean, of course, they made adaptations of Fault in Our Stars, Paper Towns, a Let It Snow adaptation came out last year as well on Netflix. But this one, Looking for Alaska, to me, this one was special. These characters are very dear to my heart. The book itself is also very dear to my heart, and I can admit that it's not a perfect story or a perfect characters or not a perfect world, but something about it has always stayed with me, and the characters are very special to me. So the fact that we're finally gonna get an adaptation, was exciting, but also a little bit scary. So Hulu might have been the perfect place to do this. I feel like Netflix would have done something very different and not as fun as what Hulu did. This came out as a very effective, authentic adaptation, which I think ended up really affecting the mood and the setting, the fashion, music, soundtrack, the cast. Everything just kind of fits really well around this story. There are some things that I would like to pick at, but first, let's look at the plot. So, Looking for Alaska, it's about this young teenager played by Charlie Plummer. His name is Miles Halter, and he lives in Orlando with his parents. He has no siblings, he has no friends, and he has a very quiet, and in his words, very boring life. He has this obsession with learning the final words of famous people, and he reads all he reads is biographies, but he only jumps to the end to find out what the last words of these people were. He finds the last words of this French poet named Francois Rabelais. His last words are I go to seek a great perhaps. Now he reads this and he goes, shit, I have to find my great perhaps now before I die. I don't want to wait until I die to start looking for it. So he asks his parents if he can go to this boarding school that his dad went to as well. And they say yes, and he goes looking for that great perhaps, for that great thing that's going to make his life worth living or worth creating something out of. And what he finds is something very interesting. He finds a group of friends in this school. He meets his roommate, Chip Martin, aka known as the Colonel, played by Danny Love, who introduces him to the rest of his friends. His character of Takumi, who is played by Jay Lee, who's also this very interesting, very smart aleck character who has a passion for knowing everything about anyone. He meets this very cute girl named Lara Butyrskaya, played by Sophia Vasileva. And of course, he meets this wonderful, very mysterious girl called Alaska Young, played by Christine Froseth. And let me just talk about the cast for a second. This cast is really good at embodying these characters. They are all very different, but they fit really well in different ways, their characters. Let's go one by one. Charlie Plummer, we know him. I mostly know him from All the Money in the World. He was the younger kid that got captured. He has very little of what he does there, but I know he really left an image. So to me, he was pretty good as Miles. He plays this very aloof, very quiet character that when he gets to have his quote unquote badass moments, he pulls them off. But the fact that he's very quiet, he's always looking at the ground. Bodily, he really fits into what I imagine Pudge as looking. Very skinny, very tall. The only thing that I never pictured in the book was the hair. He has this middle part with very long hair that goes to both sides. And it wasn't distracting. It doesn't look bad, but it was something that I did not expect. So yeah, the fact that he plays a very cool young Pudge, I think, really fits the aesthetic of the show. I think he does a great job by doing a very subtle, very quiet performance, which gets overshadowed by the rest of the cast. Christine Froseth plays Alaska. I mostly know Christine Froseth from the film Sierra Burgess is a Loser, which was a Netflix film. She played like the secondary or third part character who's posing as Sierra Burgess in the film. I don't remember a lot of her, but for some reason she looked kind of older in that one than she does here. She manages to look kind of youngerish in this role. I like her. I think she does fine as Alaska, but Alaska was the only character in the main group of friends that I never could put a face on it. The only face that I could remember thinking like, oh, this one kind of fits was like a younger Willa Holland, like pre-Arrow Willa Holland. I think she would have done a wonderful Alaska back in the day. Does Kristen Froseth do good? She does good. She plays the mysterious girl next door-ish character pretty well, and she manages to pull the lines pretty well. I think she does fine as Alaska. I don't know if they could have found someone else that could have been better, but she's fine. Danny Love plays the Colonel, and he brings such a strong, audacious tenacity to this performance. He plays the character very different than what Charlie Plummer and Kristen Froseth are doing. While Charlie and Christine are very clearly doing a character based on what the book is and making the role theirs, Danny Love is straight up doing the book word from word. I don't know if his dialogue was just written different, but every time he's on screen, he manages to capture the book word for word. He's pretty much doing a soliloquy or like a long monologue based on every line that the book has as him. It almost feels like he's in a play and the two of them are in a TV show. They're on very different leagues. And I think that speaks to Danny Love as a fantastic young talent. I think he does great in this role. But it's almost like he's chewing the scenery, like he wants to be the main character. And I'm all for it. I mean, Chip is a great character. He definitely has this great moments where he shines. He outshines the rest of the cast most of the time. I would love to see him in a main role just to see what he does. But here, as a side character, kind of struggling to be the main character, he does good, if not a little bit distracting because of what everyone else is doing. Jay Lee plays Takumi, and he does wonders. He feels like he jumps straight out of the book, but in a more natural way. Like he gets more different lines than the book. I feel like Danny Love as the Colonel got a lot of the same lines that he got from the book, and Jay Lee got to, I don't know if he got to improvise, I don't know if he got different lines, but he got to do a lot more for Takumi, I think, than the rest of the cast. He got to be more playful. He got to be a little bit angry, and I think it really worked in the context, because Takumi and Lara are the two characters that appear less in the book. They have of course they have a presence, but not as much as we would like them to. And I think the fact that it's an 8-episode series, it allows them to do a little bit more. So I love what he's doing. I like how they learn to cut what needed to be cut and add what needed to be added. I didn't need to hear him rap. I thought it was fine, those little scenes when he was just beatboxing, hanging out with the Colonel. I thought he did great. Sophia Vasileva plays, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, she plays Lara Petrskaya, and another character that's also expanded from the book. She plays this very cutesy character that is expanded here. She becomes Miles' girlfriend at some point, and I like how they expanded on her. They made her a little bit more independent. They added a little bit more of backstory. She's present in all the scenes that she needs to be present, but she's present for even more. It's kind of like what they did with the Paper Towns movie, where they also made two girls coming to the trip, not just the one girl. So I think that really works. So that's the main cast. That's who we're mainly following here. A lot of not very well-known actors. I like how we got like this very indie-ish feeling cast. The most well-known actor, I think to me, was Ron Cephas Jones, who has been in a lot of things. He was in Venom. He was in Luke Cage. He's been in a lot of things recently, and he plays Dr. Hyde, who's the religions teacher at school, and he's also chewing the scenery. I love what he's doing, but I'll get to him in a second. So that's our cast. The main plot of the movie, like I said, this kid, Miles Halter, goes to this boarding school and he meets this group of friends. And this group of friends, they are the smartest kids in school. They're super smart. They're very well educated. They know about art. They know about literature. They know about science. They know about a lot of things. But they also have a bit of a dark side. You know, they love pranks. This whole school lives off that. They live off pranks. And here is where I think Miles starts getting the idea of, oh, these are both the smart kids and the cool kids. How is that possible? My 16-year-old mind can't comprehend that those things are not or can be mutually exclusive. So that's the kind of world where we're living here. Human complexity, character complexity. These characters sometimes will say things and then contradict each other, which is what teenagers are like. This is exactly how teenagers are like, and I like what they're doing. So the plot goes like this. Miles meets these kids. He starts hanging out with them. He starts to do things that he usually wouldn't do, like drinking, smoking, doing these pranks. But he also is applying himself a lot in school, and it gives him an opportunity to change, get to know a lot of more things. And one of the ways that he does that is through Dr. Hyde's class, which is a world religions class. They learn three different religions and try to answer the world's biggest questions through the perspective of each religion. This allows Miles to get to ask himself that question. Through this, he also gets to meet Woolie's characters, who are so cartoony, you might as well believe that they're out from something like Karate Kid. But, you know, they weren't a lot like that in the book. But I think they work. I think they work in an environment like this. And they're played by really, really actors that could, you know, very easily fit these characters. This show has a very different structure from others. It works better as a TV show in that way, because every chapter in the book, 200 days before, 10 days before, 3 days before, instead of chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then in the middle part, there's a section where it just says after, and then we go 2 days after, 3 days after, 10 days after, 100 days after. We jump into this. There's something that happens in the middle that's going to break the story. And we're going to get to that when we jump into post spoilers. That structure is added into this show as episode breaks. So every time an episode ends, it says 100 days before, 50 days before, 20 days before, 10 days before. And then when the thing happens, the episodes go after, 2 days after, 10 days after, 100 days after. It breaks the commodity of the show, but I kind of like that they did that. It's a nicely paced show. Now that we're talking about that, I want to talk a little bit about the changes from the novel to the show. Now, of course, this is an adaptation. Of course, there have to be changes, but I did notice a couple and I wanted to touch on them a little bit. First of all, the second episode includes a scene with a debutante ball. That scene is completely made up. It has no position in the book, but I kind of like that. It gave the characters an opportunity to bond and Miles an opportunity to be a part of this group that does these pranks. I like all the scenes with the prank, and when we finally get to the debutante ball, it was kind of interesting how we got to see all that. Dr. Hyde, the character of Dr. Hyde is given a larger storyline and backstory in this show, and I like that they did that. I like how they contributed to that. They made him have this backstory with a former lover, how the former lover passed away. I like how they made him more present with the scenes with Chip and the mom. I like how they gave them an opportunity to breathe out and be ever present in here. I believe that, and it gives an opportunity for Ron Cephas Jr. Did I say that right? No, sorry, Ron Cephas Jones to play this character who he does very well. I love what he's doing. The Colonel Might getting expelled storyline gets tied into the barn prank scene. The Colonel getting expelled was also a thing that is not present in the book, and they made him a bigger issue here. It added to the drama. It made it a little bit longer, but I don't know, it had more weight here, and I just didn't think that the pace of the book, which is more chill, more slice of life, I would have liked to have seen more scenes like that in the novel. This one went more for drama. A lot of couples that do not end up together in the book get together here. The Eagle and the Friend teacher getting together. Sure, why not? That makes sense. Takumi and Lara getting together. You could kind of smell this was going to happen in the book, but it ends up showing here. How did they get together? We never know, but they just do. Longwell and Sarah getting together. I mean, that kind of also makes sense, but it's more explained in the show, which is nice. Alaska being discovered as a rat carried way more weight in the show, as we see her being shunned by the whole school instead of just her friends. This is moved on pretty quickly in the book, but it does not become an issue. And here, this is a 3-4 episode thing that lasts until the very end. So that ends up really affecting here. I do like a lot of things that the show did, but a couple of the negatives that I had. Book Alaska, she's way less clear about her affection for Pudge. Like we're aware that she's very flirty. She likes to flirt, and that she loves flirting with Pudge because of the reaction that he gets, but it's never fully confirmed if she does like him, which is why what she does ends up being very explicit. So that's like the one change I didn't like in the show. In the show, it's very obvious that she does have feelings for him, even now showing that she broke up with her boyfriend Jake to be with him, but then she has a different fate. I didn't love that, actually. I didn't love if she does like him or if she's just flirting. I didn't like that they confirmed that. I feel like a lot of the book was based on how we shouldn't assume and we shouldn't misimagine people. That's my one big strike against the show. I didn't like that it expanded perspectives is a thing that the show added, and I didn't love it. I'll be completely honest. Throughout the book, we're seeing everything from Miles' perspective, and we never know if Alaska does have feelings for him. And in this one, you can tell that she definitely does. I didn't love that. I feel like they could have made it a little bit more vague, just so the show carried the same weight as what we see in the book. They did the same thing with the Paper Towns movie, where spoilers, but at the end in the book, when they do find Margot, Q just goes up to her and is like, "Hey, I'm here to save you. Like, what's up?" And then she goes like, "What the fuck is wrong with you? Like, of course you think I needed saving." You know, the message is very obvious there. And when they did the movie, it's just they just bump into each other, and she's like, "Oh, I didn't want you to save me, but like whatever." Like, no, like part of the weight of the lesson that we learn is you have to learn these things the hard way, and the books are very clear about that, and the show is not. The show is very kind to that lesson, and I feel like this is a lesson that needs to be learned the hard way, because some people just need to shake this into their heads. And yeah, it does end up affecting it. We see Alaska and Chip meet. I didn't really need to see that. I feel like that affected a little bit about my pacing of the show. Like, I can just assume that they became friends and that's it. And when they do this, I'll be honest, I didn't love it. My last area of opportunity that I found into the show is I could have used a little bit more of the before and a little bit more of the after. I feel like 10 episodes would have been perfect, maybe 12, just so we can have like an equal footing on what happens before and after. The before part in the book is shorter than the after part, and in the show we get like 6 episodes of the before and only 2 episodes of the after, and I don't feel like that's balanced at all. I feel like we're missing out on very interesting drama, and I feel like if we had gotten like 6 episodes of the before and 6 episodes of the after, maybe 7 of the before and 5 of the after, we could have done with a little bit more chemistry of the characters, more improvised moments, more moments of them just hanging out and being people. I would have loved to have seen something like that. That's the thing with the things that I like, the things that I didn't like. Falls in love with this Alaska character because he meets her and she's everything that he's been looking for. She is the representation of this great perhaps. She's mysterious, she's a reader, she smokes, she drinks, she has this great adventure. She's very the show starts, and the book as well starts with presenting her kind of like as a manic pixie dream girl, but you start realizing after we get to the after section that she is actually a criticism of the manic pixie dream girl. She exists, and then spoilers. Here we're gonna go into spoilers, so just spoilers. Let's go. She's taken away. She dies. She gets into a car accident and she dies. And throughout the story of the book, we start to realize that, maybe we shouldn't misimagine her the way that, everyone has, because Pudge did that, the Colonel did that. Everyone in school had an opinion and a different image of her. And that's wrong. That's wrong. We shouldn't misimagine people that way. So that's the lesson that we have to learn at the end. And yeah, so throughout the before part, we have a lot of these moments of the characters just hanging out, they're getting together, they're hanging out, they're having parties, they going to this smoking hole location to smoke, to drink, to talk, they go into this woods to talk, to hang out. And I love seeing them hang out. Like, this is exactly how I picture them in the book, just like hanging out, making jokes, talking. They talk about books, they talk about religion, they talk about, they make jokes, they talk about food, they get into fights, they have these relationships, and they're expanded and well represented in the before part. I really like how they did that. When we get to the after part, which is the big conflict, or the big scene that makes this the before and after, is the car accident. So after the car accident, we see Alaska is dead. We don't see her dead, but we know she's dead. And now the characters have to grieve, and they have to move on from this, and they have to find out if her death was caused by a suicide or if it was an actual accident. Where was she going? Why did this happen? And that's why the show is called Looking for Alaska, which is why I think the show did not benefit from that. It's 2 episodes of just the looking, when the first 6 episodes is just them hanging out. The title does not give a spoiler to what happens, but it does feel like a wasted opportunity. Like that Looking for Alaska, or the original title Misimagining Alaska, I think would have worked a little bit better here. I think the show ends up brilliant, affected to it. On the after scenes, we see the characters grieving, we see them going to the funeral, we see them planning this Alaska Young memorial prank that they're doing. And all those scenes are also in the book. They end up really working. The acting is strong enough to carry out this very natural performances. But there's like a part of me that feels like something is missing. I feel like maybe the great Looking for Alaska adaptation has not been done yet. Like, this is good, but it could be better. Sorry, Wonder Woman 1984. The adaptation is alright. This is an alright adaptation. But I feel like there's some things that could still be done. I feel like maybe the actors are not the best actors for this. I mean, they're good. They do a good job, but maybe there are younger actors, or maybe actors at the right age at some other time that could do a stellar performance. If all of them were giving the same direction or the same positioning as Danny Love is doing, or what Charlie Plummer is doing, if they were all on the same page, sometimes they just feel like they're reading pages of the book to each other and not really talking to each other. And that can really affect the acting. It can affect the dynamic of what the characters are going through. That's what I think ended up really affecting. I want to talk about the soundtrack for a second, because this is a wonderful soundtrack. I love how the fact that it decided to actually take place in 2004, 2005, it ended up fitting really well with the aesthetic, how everyone is dressed, the fashion, the music that they're listening to. If they had given smartphones to these kids, this show would not be as entertaining as it was. And I think it ended up really working. I love how the characters are dressed. I love the music that they're listening to. Every episode features an indie-ish cover version of a song from that time. and it ends up really working. From songs like Milkshake by Khalees, I Will Follow You Into the Dark, Fix You by Coldplay, Take Me Out by that rock band, I forgot their name, but I love that. Yeah, it added a lot of personality to the episodes. Someone mentioned to me that it could be like they're trying to steal what Riverdale is doing. I don't think that's exactly what Riverdale is doing. I think it's very different. I think it really fits the tone, the mood of what the characters are doing. If you see the first trailer that came out, the trailer is just the characters reading lines from the book, even lines that the characters themselves don't say while they're walking around the campus. I really like that reveal trailer. I like how they carried out that mood into the show. So setting, place and time, fashion, this is all present. The soundtrack is great. We have to ask ourselves if this added two questions. Does this work, and who is this for? The question, does it work, is yes. I think the show really works as an adaptation. It really works as an introduction to the story. The book is, of course, different, but not that different. It's like the same song in a different key. Sometimes there are scenes that it really captures the spirit of the book, but there are enough differences to make it its own thing. Who is this for? Fans of the book. Fans of the book are gonna be pleased to find a direct, fun adaptation of the book. Remember when they did the Let It Snow adaptation for Netflix? That book and that movie are very different, but it's kind of like what Eminem did to that Kingdom Hearts song when he sampled it. He kind of chopped it up into a billion pieces, rearranged it, and made a new thing out of it. That's what they did with Let It Snow. Fun experiment. It's like the book, the remix as a movie. This one, it's a more clear adaptation with enough differences to be its own thing. I would really be interested in hearing what people that haven't read the book think about this adaptation, because I think the fact that it was done by Hulu and not by Netflix or like a bigger developer kept the adaptation grounded. Like, okay, only the people that have read the book are gonna look for this. So if you haven't read the book and you've gotten this far, first of all, wrong, spoilers. But second of all, I would really like to hear what anyone that didn't read the book thinks about the adaptation, because sometimes I feel like the John Green dialogue works really well on the page, but when I see it on screen, I felt this way in Fault in Our Stars, and I feel this way here. It feels like they're reading the book. It doesn't feel like a performance. So I don't know if it's the dialogue or if it's the acting, but the fact that I'm seeing it on two different adaptations makes me think it's the dialogue. And I love John Green dialogue, but maybe it works better in the page than it does on the screen. So I really want to hear anyone that hasn't read the book. I want to hear your thoughts on the Looking for Alaska adaptation. My opinion is that it's great. I think the Looking for Alaska adaptation is a cool niche little thing. I like that it's a limited series, no season 2, no nothing, just 8 episodes. It's a one shot, it's a one and done. And I like that I got an opportunity to hang out with these characters more than 10 years after the book came out, more than 10 years after I personally read the book. I like that. I like how they didn't change. I like how they stayed how I remember them from the book. They had a little bit of change, and the actors definitely bring in a lot of personality into them. I like what the adaptation is doing. It's not perfect. It's definitely not perfect, and maybe the fact that I'm not watching it while I'm their age, which is when I read the book, it's going to affect it, because I read the book when I was the age of the characters, so I felt right at home. I felt like I was at Culver Creek hanging out with these kids. But now, 10 years later, it hits different, but it was definitely nostalgic. You know, it ended up really working, maintaining a lot of the same lines from the book, and the spirit of the book is definitely there. It's just, like I said, in a different key. So my rating, I'll give it a nice 8.5 out of 10. It's a nice adaptation. It's 8 episodes, 50 minutes per episode. I enjoyed it. The book is definitely better. If you can get a chance to read the book, definitely give yourself the opportunity. But this is a nice adaptation. If you have a Hulu account and you want to check out a Hulu original, like instead of their content itself, I think this is definitely a nice entry into their catalog. Good for Hulu, good for John, good for these kids. I'm so glad to visit them in Culver Creek. I will gladly do it again. If you're listening to us on YouTube, you can follow us on any of our links down below. Thank you for joining us. If you'd like to hear more about our thoughts on movies, go to therollback.net. I've been Chema, reviewing Looking for Alaska, and this was The Rollback.